It's really live. I hit live and we are live. And
Wow.
welcome to the Real and Raw. I thought it was on the show. Lynn Serrano.
And I'm Brian Kelm.
We'll be right back after this. I love it. It never gets old. You know, that little light goes on, is it live? And you don't, like, you're like, am I ready? Am I not ready? Or what's going on? Or this or that. And I'm just glad I have my partner in crime here, Brian, who last week, my power, I guess that was a real choppy video last week.
Mm-hmm.
It was, the power went out. And I think so. There was, but the thing is I don't see why, if my power was going out or my Wi-Fi was sketchy, why it would affect you because you're in a different location. So, any rate, welcome to our podcast. We are Real and Raw. We love that in our name here because we don't have a script here. We just go by the way it is. And as you can see, Brian's on the road again.
Yes.
And my condolences to you because you're on the road because you just came back from a funeral.
Yeah, well, I had to cut it short because there was no internet coverage where I was, and I tried to race to somewhere where it has decent or whatever internet coverage. Yeah, my uncle passed away 2 weeks ago today, and he went fast. He that's not what this show is about, but he was he's not suffering anymore, but he had three things going wrong with him. So it's I'm trying to look at the good, and I think that's kind of what inspired this. So this topic today that we're about to get into. So this episode is for my uncle. I'd like to dedicate this episode to my uncle. So.
Absolutely, because I was like, I tossed around the saying, what's the opportunity,
Hi,
or where can you see the good? Hi, Sandy. Where can you see the bright side of things? And then we came up with where's the opportunity and where's the lessons in life. Yeah. And so, so I'm happy to dedicate this one for your uncle too, because I think every time we lose somebody in our family, it really hones things down for us, doesn't it, Brian?
Well, and truth be told is that this was an uncle that I had an indifference with. I perceived certain things about him that if I was to have a conversation with him, he probably wouldn't realize that that's how I feel about it. And that's what kept me separate from him. Small talk was the extent of what we talked about. And that's just not who I am. It's like, I don't care about the weather. I don't care about, how the sports teams are doing. I want to know about you, right? I want to go deep, and that's just who I am, right? I kind of consider surface level information just very wasteful of time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I get it, that we have to have some of that, but it's like, what are you dealing with? Tell me about how that surgery was or whatever. Let's get deep, because the surface level stuff is not what I'm about, right?
Yeah.
And I get that you have to have that to some degree, but I also get it when you don't know how to relate to somebody, where else do you go?
Well, how about this? If you look at it, well, there's a point that you do the little chit chat, banter, but there's got to come the time where the same shit and bantering's got to stop, and it's got to go deeper from there. I think that's basically what you're trying to say too. I mean, you don't go 50 years, 40 years, 30 years talking to the same person and not moving the needle to a deeper conversation of essence of who they are, what they connect to, what, And so I think that's, not that I'm trying to change what you're saying, but I hear what you're saying, but I also know that, like you said, the conversation has to go deeper.
And it's like it was always there for me. It was always in front of me anytime that there was a family reunion or whatever. And I was there. I came back from where I live to go with my mom to go see him 2 weeks ago. So on the night that he passed away, I actually saw him that day. And there are two people that I want to work on, for my EMDR therapy, where I can complete on my terms of where the indifference is, right? And EMDR therapy gets rid of trauma or situations that you're very emotionally stricken to, you're very emotionally involved in. but it allows you to be around that person or think of that person without there being negativity or without there being, some kind of negative connotation.
Or
And he was,
triggers for you.
yeah, or triggers. And he was one of those people. And,
Mhm.
but all of that went away when I'm like, there is nothing I need to work out. And it's like, I'm not using him going up to heaven as an excuse. It was like, wow, none of that matters anymore. And I'm still
Right.
processing it. I'm still in shock about it, but it's like, wow, was I making up a whole bunch of stuff, and to say I love you before I left with my mom 2 weeks ago today, or 2 weeks ago, April 3rd, it was the greatest feeling in the world to have him say it back, not knowing that night he was going to go on to heaven. Yeah.
Now, has he said I love you before?
Yeah, I'm sure, but it's like I either didn't hear it or I didn't wait to hear it or whatever,
Or you didn't feel it then or anything like that?
Correct.
Yeah. But
And
that's
it's like people are going to be who they're going to be, and it might not be how you want them to show up, but it doesn't replace who they are to you. And it's just like, um, I'm still coming down from this whole thing happening because it's been 2 weeks in the making. I've been strong for my family and all of that, but at the same time, it's like full transparency and full vulnerability is that we didn't, I just chose not to get along with him given who he was, and that's not who my dad was. So it's like, well, how can my uncle exude that, right? And this might be only something I see, but it's still there for me. And but everything was whisked away when I said I love you, and knowing that he was in the condition that I saw him in, I'm like, wow, nothing else matters besides being here with him.
Yeah. Well, and again, I preach that. Hi,
Hey,
Debbie.
Debbie.
I always preach that to you, that sometimes, we don't realize when it gets to the end, the regrets of not saying I love you and being there. And a lot of things don't matter at that time. You see things from a different perspective. And I think that's how life is. Sometimes you just don't understand or know what you don't know then, but you'll know it later.
Correct.
And again, even though for you it's important to have deep conversations and stuff, you realize even with family and stuff, it just might not be in the cards between those two people.
Correct.
But to know right now that he loves you and he said that and you had the final words,
Right.
you were given a big blessing to that, so that you still didn't stay with your side of things. And I think it just makes you such a more vulnerable and awesome person, because you can empathize and see from a different perspective that sometimes you just have to realize, like they say, agree to disagree, right?
Yeah. Right.
And not to hold what was 10 years, 5 years, whatever back, or 5 minutes ago, because that's fleeing and gone. It's how it's the final things at the end that are really important. And it sounds like you had that.
Well, and my new framework is going to be like, okay, no matter if I have an indifference with somebody, what if they were to pass on tomorrow? Would I think different? Would I set aside my indifference? And the answer is yes. And I know that I don't know how this is going to help me in the future, but I know that I'm going to look at things differently.
Well,
and it's like even driving over to my uncle's place 2 weeks ago, it wasn't as if like I'm going to try to relate to him, but then maintain my view of him. All of that went away, right? And I don't question why I did it, or I don't question how it showed up. I'm just amazed that it's like, wow, now that he's no longer with us, how and I don't want to regret the way I was or how we whatever. It's in this case for our topic today, it's a lesson, and it's also like the opportunity is whatever you're perceiving in somebody might only be on your side of the fence.
Brian, I'm sorry in your time of sadness, and I'm really sorry for that. But I'm blessed to know that you know where I'm coming from now, because I've been there and done that. And I preach that all the time. I'm always preaching, hey, no matter what your differences are, there's going to be a day where those differences don't matter, and you're going to regret not having conversation or filling in the gap or having the opportunity to have a remembrance that you want that to be your final remembrance, and not all the bitter and the things that you stay behind. So I think with my mission of always preaching that, you really, because I've been there. I've been right where you're saying, And it gets to a time, like how many times you have to have that in your life to realize that shit, they may not change and this may not be, but if I'm going to have resolve and deal with when they pass or when I have no more opportunity, I need to do the best I can to love them where they're at.
Yeah.
And realize that it is the way it is, but I'm the only one that can move the needle for my health, for your health. And
plus you're shortchanging yourself. It's like, especially if if it's only on your side that you're having this feeling about it, and they have absolutely no idea,
right,
you're only punishing yourself.
Exactly, because at the end of the day, he was probably laying there and saying, you know what, Brian, I love you no matter what. And he probably didn't go to heaven with baggage that he was carrying about you. And you realize that. You realize, wait, he loves me. Right. And I forgot that he loves me, And I think that's such a great, bright side of things to realize, well, shit, I was holding all this, but he's holding just love to me now. He's just here. And it's just like you said, it's a beautiful thing in a moment of sadness for you too. So I'm sorry there.
Well, yeah, and no matter the situation, there's always an opportunity. There's always a lesson to be learned, no matter if it's heartbreak from a relationship or something doesn't work out in business or whatever. There's always something to learn. But here's the thing, is that it's either internal or external. The opportunity is either internal or external. But the only work that there is to be done is all internal, right? Because you can control that. You can't control the external world. And so in dedication of my uncle for this show is, where's the opportunity? Where's the lesson? That's the work we do on ourselves. That's how we look at life, but also how we can bring our best self forward.
Right.
More compassionate, more empathetic.
Yep.
And more relatable to people. But it's our opportunity on our end to do that work. What are the lessons? Well, and without sounding cliche, if somebody passes on, life is short, preserve every moment you have. I mean, I don't want to sound cliche, but it's like every time that somebody in your life passes on or is terminally ill, don't be that person that only comes out of the woodwork when you find out that they're terminally ill.
Yeah, don't wait till that time. Take care of shit before. And I preach that too. Don't wait till the last minute to make things right. Work with them, as you go, because there's so many regrets in life, but there's so many we can avoid too. And
go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Well, like you said, is that if you're willing to look and willing to be vulnerable and self-expressed, but also though transparent with yourself, there's always a lesson. There's always an opportunity. It's just a matter if you're humble enough to find it and do something with it. Right. But I mean, like Larry Levine and Rex and other people say, it's like, you're going to be your greatest improvement. You're going to be your greatest student. And you need to look within yourself. Where could I have done better? How could I have been a greater service? Where could I have taken action that I didn't take before? And it doesn't mean any of us are wrong. We're all human beings. We're flawed individuals just by default. But it's that discovery.
Yeah.
That makes a huge difference.
I learned this lesson at 15 when my friend died in the car crash, when they stole the vehicle and he died at the scene. And, to see some of the people that were like, I love Don and blah, 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 and the people that had regrets and this and that. So, I mean, I've learned this lesson and with other deaths, but I learned at a very young age to realize that, to see people have so many regrets when they're younger and they carry them to being full adults. And it's just crippling as the age and the time goes by and, numbers, now that I'm 57, I mean, the numbers go down, you just never know. And so, it just is such a wake up call, and I mean, I preach that through the whole pandemic, like wake up, appreciate people and where they're at and what they do. And I just think it's like, why does it always have to be the one that eventually is going to die? By then to try to make up for everything and to live with that regret. It's not good for your health. It's not good for anybody. It's not good for your memories.
Well, if anything, to keep a loved in, to keep a family member alive even after they pass on, we have that opportunity every day.
Yes.
And the opportunities and lessons we take with us are our own. We don't have to prove them to anybody. We don't have to declare them. But we can do that work on ourselves to make ourselves a better person, but also What happened here that I can get better on?
Right.
Where can I become a better human being for everybody? Where can I show my love a little bit more often?
Well,
And there's no limits to that. It's just a matter of like, okay, after today, what are people going to take on? You know, where's the opportunity and what I learned today and what I learned 2 weeks ago, and then years leading up to this that I can take with me, and I rewrite that. I take that eraser and I rewire.
and remember this, what I always love to do is I love to tell people things that I eventually would say at their funeral.
Oh, yeah.
Like I say, I always loved Brian. I loved our conversations. I always tell Brian I love his conversations. I love how in depth he is. Tell people what it is you appreciate or like about them.
Right.
Because we definitely have no problem saying, well, I hate when you do this. Well, instead of bringing that up, why don't we say, this is what I like? And those things help so that those people never wonder.
Well, and I think one of the things, that is like, given that what you just said is vulnerability, is that there's a consistency here, is that my dad, when he passed along, him and I weren't on good terms. My uncle and I were not on good terms. But it's like, what am I doing with that? And it's like, if I was to write their eulogy, I would say, hey, I love my uncle, but him and I, we didn't see eye to eye. Now, that might only be on my end, but I want to declare it instead of hiding it or muting it or making myself appear a certain way or whatever. Why not come clean with it? Here's how I felt like we were indifferent. Do I feel that way now? No, because he's no longer with us.
Right.
And I don't get that time back, but I'm also not regretting the fact I'm learning from this. There's an opportunity here for me to bridge that gap from who I was, which doesn't matter anymore, right? And to just give that up. And it's just interesting about how having this life experience happen, where he goes on to heaven, about how that indifference can immediately wash away without nothing to be said more.
Yeah, and that leaves a big lesson. That leaves a big lesson.
Yeah.
In so many things.
And it's just, oh, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say.
No, go ahead.
Same thing goes with life as it does in business, and all the way around. It's in any relationship you have, period, whether it's professional or personal.
And I think too is that and this gets into a little bit more spiritual, but it's like, never miss an opportunity to say I love you, because you don't know when you're not gonna be able to do it anymore. But also, though, it's very sobering, but also, though, very humbling, where it's like, whether or not you got along with that person or loved one or whatever, is that if they know that you love them, like almost like a third party view or a third person view, how that just makes everything, there are no words to say it, so you don't need to say it.
Right.
That you love that person, they know, and it's reciprocated. That's all I needed to know.
And that's one thing I love about doing our videos. If I'm gone tomorrow, Brian, over and over, and that just should bring you joy.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm saying. There are a lot of people stay co-workers 30 years in the same business and never said, I really appreciate every day that you make me laugh.
Yeah.
Gosh, I love you for that. I love when your wife makes me cookies and brings them in, or whatever. Like not sharing those things so that person really knows, or just assumes.
Yeah, that's
especially the people that are like really cocky, and like back in New York, everybody can be sarcastic and sound like an asshole. But you wonder, are they being an asshole because they really don't like you, or it's just their demeanor that they're trying? You know what I mean? Like, until you know from the horse's mouth, you don't know.
Correct. And that's you bring up the brain is going to make meaning out of anything, right? And assumptions or whatever, but then the detrimental part is that we start believing an assumption. Mm-hmm. We have a certain perception, and somebody shows up a certain way. Well, it's called cognitive dissonance. Mm-hmm. We're more we don't even know if it's true, but we start believing our assumptions, and then it starts becoming our reality. And how do we know that? Because we're not willing to talk to the person, because of what might be said or whatever. And our brains are a powerful thing, but we're our own worst enemy.
Right.
And I made a lot of meaning about how my uncle showed up to me. good, bad, or other. But the opportunities and lessons, I can't go back, but I'm also not going to live with regret.
Right.
You know, I told my dad before, I told my dad after he passed away, when I'd go out to his gravesite, I said, I will live out the rest of my life in your honor, with your legacy in mind, who you were to people, how you impacted them. And I still want to maintain true to that commitment. You know, my dad was a very boisterous guy. He had over 400 people at his funeral, you know, and there was a picture of my uncle amongst all of his brothers and sisters, or at least the ones that were alive at the time. And it was I got goosebumps when I'm like, wow, there's my dad over in the corner. There's my other uncle Chuck in the corner. And then here's my uncle who passed away. And I'm like, wow. It's at the time of age where people are taken.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't like it.
Yeah.
I don't like it at all.
Yep. And that's one thing I learned from the Bible, and I learned growing up, and I learned at 7 when my grandmother was taken from me, and it's still something I don't like. But all I can do is set myself up with telling people, do videos, leave memories, leave crumbs, leave things behind that are going to help others to ease with the transition of you're not here anymore.
Right.
You know? Yeah. And so I think it's great to acknowledge that at the end of the day, you know, you love your uncle and you know he loves you. Yeah. You know, and that's a blessing nobody can take away from you. There's Correct. No question in your mind that he loved you, and that's the most important thing. Lesson, you know, the bright side of that you right. were blessed to see him one last time too. Most people don't get that.
When my mom sent me a text 2 weeks ago on April 3rd in the evening. No, maybe it might have been the next day, so it would have been April 4th that your uncle at 10 o'clock at night or somewhere around there passed away. I'm like, oh my goodness. Like I was there yesterday to see him hours before he passed on.
The window of opportunity was closing, and you know, and were you there when your dad passed away?
No, my dad was on the road up in Minnesota. He was finishing out his working years driving truck, and he was up in Minnesota at the time.
See, so this time you got a blessing, though. This time you were given
That's
that
true.
window. Think about that too.
That's very true.
You don't have that final niche of saying, "When I didn't have a chance to say goodbye to my uncle,
correct,
like my dad." So
right.
That's another bright side of this.
Yeah, that's
something he's going to be with your dad.
Oh yeah.
So again, how cool is that?
Yeah.
You know, how cool is that?
Yeah, I'm gonna, throughout the day and whatnot, I'll be pondering that. Where it's like, wow, I wasn't there for when my dad passed away. I was there the night before, but I was there on the day, earlier in the day of when my uncle passed away. So
that's what I mean.
That's very cool. Very cool.
Who knows? And how much your dad had in doing with that. You know what I mean? Like him being right there, because I know my mom had a lot of people there in the room, spirits and stuff waiting for her to greet her there. Cause she would be she'd be going like this, like telling them to stop. It was a crazy, amazing thing. So, I think that's a blessing you can definitely take. And the bright side of that is to know that you had that closure.
Right.
Yeah. So anyways, so to your dad and to your uncle, we dedicate this to them.
Yeah. Yeah. I want to just leave everybody in no matter if you're dealing with somebody that's terminally ill or you're going through life situations, no matter how hard it gets, that moment will pass. But it's like, and I'm a firm believer that everybody in life is a part of our DNA, right? My makeup, your makeup is a part of the people that, good, bad, or other, were in our life.
Yeah.
And my uncle taught me some things that, and I think it might not necessarily be him. It's just an overarching family set of values, military, good work ethic, discipline. And it's not like you're splitting hairs or pulling, straws in terms of who defined that more for you. Who cares if it doesn't stick? So with everything in life, You know, if I'm able to impart something, look for the opportunity because it's there. That's why it's framed. Where's the opportunity?
Yeah.
Where's the lesson? Because there is one. It's just a matter of if you're willing to think about it or go there mentally and be vulnerable and be transparent to find it.
Well, it was an honor to do the show today. And as always, you know, I
Likewise.
love you.
Love you too.
Be
Thanks
safe
everybody
on the
for
road.
watching.
Okay.
I sure will.
And you know, I'm going to be motherly to you like I always do and say, make sure you text me later and make sure you got home okay. I do that to him.
For everybody that watched today, I hope you got something out of this. You know, we all learn together. We all can be a space for each other. But having that abundance mindset that, you know, and it's like I learned this when my dad passed away is that like don't look at how long that, you know, how that person is no longer in your life anymore. What did they instill into you? What did they prepare you for in life?
Yeah.
You know, how are you able to still live out their life even though that they're not here and they might,
Right.
you know, their spirit's here, but that you know, so you can thrive in the world.
Absolutely.
Those are very powerful things that I'm going to take with me.
Yep. All right, Brian. Love you. Stay
Love
safe.
you too. I will.
Talk to you guys next week. Love
Thanks,
you.
everyone.
Bye.
Bye.